Okay, so I already covered the pilot episode, gave you my thoughts on that, but one central event in the pilot episode that is such a pivotal moment in the whole series that it deserves its own video is the Porsche crash. This is what connects Clark and Lex to each other. It's a defining moment in at least Lex's character arc. You might be able to make an argument for Clark's as well. It helps set up a lot of the dynamics between the characters, and that happens in the pilot. But I'm here in this video to tell you that the narrative you're familiar with about the car crash is a lie.
Are you watching closely?
This event gets referenced over and over again in the series after this happens. It comes up lots of different times. And it's one of the things that made me feel like I was being gaslighted by this show. Made me feel like I'm going crazy. Because they present it to us. They present the scene to us. It's not like we learn about it because this is what this character remembers about the event, or like, they're telling us what they recall. It's like, no, they actually, in the context of the show, we watch it in real time. We all see what happened. But for the rest of the series, as far as I got, the characters all talk about the event incorrectly. Fans of the show talk about the event incorrectly.
Lying to you. That's why. You understand me? Lying.
Okay, so what's the story you've heard? What's the narrative we're all familiar with? Lex is out on the road in his Porsche, driving like a maniac. Maniac's the word we settled on thanks to the hate-filled Jonathan. He's driving way too fast, he's driving recklessly, and he ends up crashing into Clark. Clearly, Lex is the one at fault. They go overboard. Clark rescues him. But guess what? That's not what happened. You hearing me?
Lying.
That's the story everyone sticks to, but that's not what happened. The car crash was not Lex's fault. It was never Lex's fault. They've been lying to us for decades. And this isn't like subtext I'm about to present to you. Like, this is the actual scene. Everybody sees it. It's in plain sight for everyone to look at. You can go look it up right now. I'm going to play some clips in this video. People are going to be like, but Lex was driving recklessly. He was driving too fast. Was he? Was he? We do see later in the series that Lex likes to drive his Porsche where he screeches his tires around, drives fast and all that kind of thing, right? But guess what? He wasn't doing that in this episode. They show us very clearly what was happening. He's looking straight ahead. His eyes are on the road. His hand is on the wheel. They show us the road. I looked this up. You can look at the road in the clip. They show it. They give you a nice view of the road itself. It is a quiet, low traffic, high visibility, wide, flat country road. If I pulled out onto that road, I would assume the speed limit is at least 55, at least. I've probably driven on roads like that where the speed limit was 65. And I wouldn't have thought twice driving a little bit faster than that. And by the way, we know how fast Lex was driving. They tell us. He was driving 60 miles per hour. That's not that fast! If it was nighttime, maybe I'd tell him to watch for deer. I live in the Midwest. But in the daytime, with low traffic on a road like that, I wouldn't think twice driving 60 on that road. But the phone, he looks at his phone. Okay, he gets a phone call, right? By the way, not a smartphone. It's not one where you got to pull it out and start scrolling on it. It's a flip phone. This is the early 2000s. He looks away for a freaking second, guys. And you watch. It's not even like he stops paying attention to the road. He like glances at the phone, glances back at the road, glances at like he's still looking at the road even as he glances at his phone, okay? That's like what you would do if you were changing the dial on your radio. He's not swiveling around to reach into the back seat. He's not drifting. He's not swerving. Nothing. He's being a good driver in this scene. It's not hidden. It's not subtext. It's right there in front of you. But the accident, how does he must have been driving badly if he got into an accident. Okay, I'm glad you asked. Let's actually pay attention to why he got into a car accident, okay? There's one important part of this story, like pivotal, significant moment in this story that doesn't make it into the general narrative that continues throughout the series. And that is the truck driver. The reason that Lex got into an accident was not because he was driving distracted. It wasn't because he was a bad driver. It wasn't because he was driving recklessly. He got into a car accident because the freaking truck driver failed to properly secure his freight. A roll of barbed wire rolls off the back of the guy's truck. And by the way, you can see bridges are built this way, and you can see it even in the film. the bridge is curved, okay? So he's coming over a bridge to something that is nice and small and low, okay? So imagine you coming over a bridge and, meeting a line of raccoons or something like that, a family of raccoons in the middle of the road. Are you sure you wouldn't run over any of those if it happened suddenly over the top? You wouldn't see it behind the bridge, right? It takes a second to get over the bridge so you can see something that's sitting low. That's why he got into a car accident, because the truck driver failed to secure his freight and he ran over this roll of barbed wire. That truck driver never gets mentioned again. Nobody talks about him, ever. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone ever mentions that guy ever again. Lex doesn't even bring him up. No one talks about the roll of barbed wire. And by the way, I also want to point out, as evidence of his good driving skills and that he wasn't a reckless driver, he was a good, skilled driver who knew what he was doing and was paying attention. He responds to the roll of barbed wire in the road instantly. He looks up, sees it. A split second later, he's already changing gears. His hands are back on the wheel. He responds immediately. He doesn't freeze up. He doesn't panic. He responds immediately. But it still hits him, blows his tires out, and there's only so much you can do when you're driving 60 miles per hour and your tires blow out underneath you. And speaking of reaction times, question. Clark hears the tires blow out. We see him turn around. Why doesn't Clark dodge? He has friggin' super speed. Lex reacted instantly without super speed. Clark just sits there like a lump. No reaction. He doesn't stop the car. He doesn't dodge. Nothing. Now, maybe you could say, well, he still hasn't figured out the extent of his super strength yet, which I think is maybe implied in the script. But, we know he has super speed. Why the heck didn't he just dodge out of the way? That's what happened in this scene. That is the Porsche crash. So why do all the characters in the show talk like something else happened? Well, Jonathan, we know, has an irrational hatred of Lex because he has a freaking inferiority complex in regard to Lionel, and he's been putting it irrationally and incredibly unjustly on Lex. But what about everybody else? I guess we'll say Clark is doing this because he's just blindly following what his dad has pushed on him, this hatred for Lex. Big question here, why doesn't Lex defend himself? He just lets himself take the blame for this event, even though it wasn't his fault. He doesn't say anything about the barbed wire, doesn't say anything about the truck driver who failed to secure it on the back of his truck. If I was to encounter something like this in real life, in a person, I would immediately be thinking, yeah, this guy is in a habit somewhere from childhood, some trauma from childhood. This is like CPTSD. He's in a habit of accepting blame for things that aren't his fault because in his childhood, that was a survival strategy. And now he's an adult and he's still doing it even though it doesn't make sense anymore. Like he accepted false blame as a child as a survival mechanism. Guess what? We find out later in the series that Lex has a major trauma in his childhood where he did exactly that. He accepted blame for something absolutely horrific that was not his fault. And he did it as a survival mechanism because he didn't want to lose his mother. We also find out that he has repressed the memories of what happened. And at this point in the series, in this pilot episode, he still believes it was his fault. Really let that sink in as you watch this. Go rewatch the pilot episode again, or at least watch the crash scene again and really let that all sink in. Now let it sink in how sick and wrong it is that people like Jonathan are blaming him for this in such vicious, hateful terms. How painful it must be hearing Clark joke about it or twist the knife, which he does later in the series, making comments about him hitting him with his car or driving recklessly. See, these are the conclusions you come to when you actually see this guy as a real person. But the characters in the show don't. The characters in the show see him like a monster. They don't see him like a person. The other big question I have, that's about the characters, but why the heck are the writers and the fans lying and gaslighting me about this event? They could have written the scene any way they wanted. They could have actually made Lex a reckless driver. Like I said, we see him later on in the series, screeching his tires around and driving like a crazy person, right? He's not doing that in this episode. He's not doing that in the pilot. In this accident scene, he doesn't do that. So they made a deliberate choice to write and direct the scene one way, and then they continue on in the series writing and talking about it as though it happened a different way. I feel like I'm watching this where I feel like I'm being gaslighted, because I think is this like a test? Are they checking to see if we're paying attention? And if it's not, if this is like they didn't do it on purpose, what is this bizarre haze that everybody is in where they can't see what's right in front of them when it disagrees with the Lex is a villain narrative?